Plattner made the announcement just days after facing accusations of rape, which he denies.
We are suspending campaign operations. This is incredibly difficult because I know that some will think it's an admission of guilt, and it most certainly is not. We're not doing it because of the allegations. We're doing it because of the structures that are being taken away from us by those in power. And I also feel an immense amount of responsibility to everyone who has worked so hard to get us to where we are.
Plattner had been under immense pressure to drop out as his initial support crumbled. We're told behind the scenes Plattner worked with staffers to navigate that exit. Maine's Democratic Party says it's approved a plan to hold a nominating convention to replace Plattner, and several candidates are already jockeying to try to fill that spot. Brad Palumbo joins us at the table. Several candidates hitting the airwaves tonight. They've already declared. But what do you make of how Graham Plattner exited and how long it took him to do?
Well, I just got my little violin out for him. You got to feel so bad. He's playing the victim. It was really probably AIPAC that made him get a Nazi tattoo, lie about it for years. It was probably AIPAC that made him allegedly physically abuse a Republican woman he used to date. And it was probably AIPAC or the establishment or something that made this latest accusation. I think he's disgraceful. I genuinely think that's one of the worst, I don't even know, announcement videos I've ever seen. No accountability, no reflection, just a weird combination of backing away, but also denying the allegation, not even standing on business. This whole thing is such a black eye for the Democratic Party writ large, though. It's not just him. They're doing the right thing eventually. But where was this energy when Lindsay Fifield came forward? Yes, she's a Republican operative. Doesn't mean she couldn't be a victim. She had contemporaneous corroboration that Graham Plattner, that she said at the time, physically abused her and locked her in a room. That should have been enough for the Believe Women Democrats. Zoran didn't withdraw the endorsement, didn't withdraw support. Bernie didn't. What are we doing here?
Yeah, look, I think that for some Democrats, for sure, it was enough. And that's what the civil war in the party was for a while there. And now the Bernie Sanderses of the world, the Ro Khannas, they have egg on their face, quite literally tonight. Because also there's a lack of contrition, for sure. He denies the allegations. He doesn't even really address the women that have come forward. Actually, I shouldn't say doesn't really. He did not address them in this 11-minute video.
He called them liars, basically, because he said everything's false.
Yes.
Yeah, he did. And, while he was being supported through all the things that Brad was talking about, Democrats like Ro Khanna and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and on and on and on and on, kept saying that, he's gotten over the rough patch in his life. He's apologized. Ro Khanna, he's on a redemption. He'll bring redemption to our nation. So they were willing to overlook or believe all of his explanations up until now. The only thing that changed is that he's no longer politically viable. His poll numbers went down to the point where it wasn't politically palatable to say that this redemption tour was going to be good for America anymore. I think you're right. He's never actually taken accountability for any of these things. The Democrats knew 98% of the things we knew about Graham Plattner, we knew before the Democrats voted in the primary in Maine, and they still voted for him.
The controversy surrounding Graham Plattner has sparked fresh debate over why some Democrats continued backing him despite the earlier accusations. But claiming this kind of political loyalty exists only within the Democratic Party overlooks how both sides have responded to scandals when power is at stake. Republicans stood behind Roy Moore during his 2017 Alabama Senate campaign, even after several women accused him of misconduct. And Donald Trump went on to win presidential elections despite years of public allegations and the Access Hollywood recording. That doesn't excuse Democrats who defended Plattner, but it does make the claim that one party consistently values character over winning far less convincing. The reality is that today's political environment often pushes both parties to stick with candidates they believe can win until the political consequences become too costly to ignore. It's also worth remembering that Plattner's decision to suspend his campaign doesn't automatically mean everyone knew the full story from the beginning. Voters often make choices based on limited information, and the allegation that ultimately ended his campaign became public only after the primary had already been held. Earlier controversies, including questions surrounding his tattoo and claims made by former partners, had been widely reported, but they had not yet led to the level of agreement that emerged later. Political parties are made up of many different voices, and several Democrats publicly criticized Plattner well before his campaign unraveled. It's equally important to remember that allegations, no matter how serious, are not the same as criminal convictions. That distinction matters because American politics has increasingly become driven by public opinion and media pressure, where politicians, activists, and commentators are often expected to reach conclusions long before the legal process is complete.
98% is a lot. Look, there were lots of Democrats who had some concerns. I definitely got yelled at for my concerns. So I want to be clear about that. I have to say, I'm not going to accept lectures from people who support Donald Trump, who was credibly accused by 13 women of sexual assault, for listening to women. Okay. Other people can talk about this, but people who stand up for Trump every day as he's faced those assaults on any side should not be throwing egg at the Democratic Party. It is unfortunate. It is unfortunate that some people were willing to look past some of these things. But the Democratic Party has done something different than the Republican Party, which is they have, let me finish.
Sure.
They are finally acting against a candidate who is credibly accused. He's not found guilty, but credibly accused of assault. And that is very different than what has happened under Donald Trump's presidency and the Republican Party.
I was just going to ask, honestly, Scott, Peter, maybe you can answer this. As an independent, I really feel like everyone's abandoned any pretense of character in politics. But I do agree Republicans have been particularly egregious at that. And when we have this serious corroborated allegation against Graham Plattner, but you have dozens of accusations against Donald Trump. One of them was litigated. You have a court finding against him. Isn't that significant more weight behind accusations against Donald Trump than there even is against Graham Plattner? How can one be disqualifying but not both?
Well, I mean, the president would say there isn't serious corroboration on these accusations.
There was a judgment.
That's what he would
There was a judgment by a jury, a federal jury.
Yeah, and the person who accused him couldn't even remember when it happened.
Well, okay, that's up to the jury.
That's the argument.
That's the jury.
At the same time, Trump identified the person who accused him as his ex-wife in those proceedings.
Graham Plattner's political collapse has brought fresh attention to the deep disagreements within the Democratic Party. At the same time, the criticism coming from some of Donald Trump's most vocal supporters raises a fair question about whether both parties are being judged by the same standard. The comparison is difficult to avoid. Trump has faced numerous allegations of sexual misconduct over the years, and unlike Plattner, one of those cases resulted in a courtroom decision. In 2023, a federal jury found Trump liable for sexual abuse and defamation in the E. Jean Carroll case. That does not resolve every accusation made against him, but it does leave him with a legal ruling that goes well beyond the allegations currently surrounding Plattner. It's also misleading to suggest that Democrats were united behind Plattner from the very beginning, because the situation was much more divided than that. Progressive activists, local party leaders, and even several prominent Democrats had expressed concerns about his history long before his campaign eventually fell apart. The party remained deeply divided over whether his past controversies, including accusations from former partners and other incidents, made him too damaged to win. That disagreement may not paint Democrats in the best light, but it also shows there was genuine debate instead of unquestioning support. Neera's point becomes even stronger when looking at the bigger picture of American politics. Republicans continued backing Roy Moore during his Alabama Senate campaign despite multiple allegations against him. Trump also remained the Republican Party's leading figure after the Access Hollywood tapes surfaced and after several former administration officials openly criticized his behavior. In both situations, many supporters chose political victory over personal conduct. The reality is that neither political party has a perfect record on this issue. That is why Neera's argument challenges the idea that Republicans can easily claim the moral high ground when it comes to accountability.
What do you say? I mean, you said what Trump would say. What would you say to the question that Brad had?
Look, my view is this. If there is serious allegations, if there's serious evidence or corroboration,
I mean,
everybody has to take responsibility.
To Brad's point, those are serious allegations.
Okay,
those are serious allegations. And then if you add 13. To the, look, I don't want to, it's not a, I think it is just a fair question that if you're going to be throwing the book at Graham Plattner, not just about what the women have accused him of, but also about his own statements about women and rape, then you should at the very least have a look at Donald Trump. He's on video saying that he could grab women by their genitals.
Have we not played that video 15,000 times?
That's exactly the point. That's exactly the
And the
point.
American people have voted. I think,
Okay,
no,
well, then you should
important
have-
I
thing
think
here-
that's what Graham
Hold on.
Plattner is arguing, is that the main voters voted. And that's what Democrats said.
But he's
Actually,
not-
no, that's
the
not good
pressure
enough.
was this is
You
no
are not a
longer
good enough candidate to
electorally
hold this
No,
job. And that's
that
a
is
different
not true.
position.
He was running even,
But
for God's
let me be
sake.
very clear
It's not
about
like
what
he was
happened.
losing.
There were
No, he's losing now. Believe
Jenny
Well, he's losing
Rassicot and
now.
Lindsay Fifield. Jenny Rassicot and Lindsay Fifield. They both said, and some of this is going back several months. This guy is a creep. Do not trust him. He's bad.
There are
As they
13
were not
women who said
believed,
they were
and
assaulted
we
by
were talking
Trump.
about Graham
I don't-
Plattner because he dropped out tonight. We've been talking about Donald Trump for the past 10
but you guys
No,
want to
I'm so
deflect
sorry.
that
I'm
question
so
that's brought
sorry.
up.
My point
You
is,
do not get to throw stones at a Democratic Party when you have stood
I'm
by
talking
Donald
about
Trump.
the media right now. I'm talking about the media and the fact that these women were not believed. It got to the point where Lindsay Fifield had to say he took off a condom while he was having sex with me. She had to leave give
It
those
is
details.
horrible. It is
You
horrible
have-
that
you have
had to
Jenny
happen.
Rassicot having
You
to
are
say,
100%
he
right. It is
raped me.
horrible.
But, so
He
Peter,
raped me.
It is
can't we-
That was
can't
what
we
it
talk about
took
how
for them
terrible
to
that
actually
is?
Yes.
get believed.
The Republican
Free
social
Beacon was
media
reporting all
accounts
this
are
months
trolling
ago.
people on X and saying, if you voted for Plattner, you voted for a rapist, which in fairness to the Plattner voters, they didn't know about this accusation when they voted for him in the primary. There's just something very tone deaf when you've just rallied around Trump on every single thing to be doing this
the
on the
hypocrisy
Republican
of it.
account.
But I hope this is, frankly, I hope
Everyone's
this
living
is.
in glass houses. It's politics.
Yeah, but
Come on,
glass houses are
You
right.
shouldn't do that yourself.
Eric Swalwell,
You
Tony
shouldn't do that
Gonzalez.
yourself.
We have these.
They're
Never got rid of them.
And that's why they're gone.
Good.
But this is a bigger problem. The bigger problem was the premise that a lot of people supported Graham Plattner around of trying to come to terms with this idea of maybe the Democrats should run the Republican game plan. That was what I always rejected about this. Like, Democrats have to stop holding everybody up to a purity test. Okay, I agree to some extent, but Nazi tattoo
100%.
was
I agree
one.
with you.
And then all of the rest of the signs all pointed to the fact that they were trying to run a bad play from the beginning.
All right, we're going to leave it there. We'll be right back after a quick break.
The backlash surrounding Graham Plattner is understandable, but it also highlights how unevenly misconduct allegations are treated in American politics today. It's difficult to watch Republicans sharply criticize Democrats over Plattner while overlooking the fact that Donald Trump returned to office carrying controversies that would likely have ended most political careers years ago. Over the years, Trump faced more than a dozen allegations of sexual misconduct, and in 2023, a New York jury found him liable for sexual abuse and defamation in the E. Jean Carroll case. When that legal ruling is considered alongside the Access Hollywood tape that surfaced nearly a decade earlier, Abby's broader argument becomes much harder to ignore. More and more, both voters and political leaders have shown that electoral success often takes priority over personal conduct. What makes the Plattner controversy especially difficult for Democrats is that